Starting up.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our roundtable episode. Today we have Marie joining us, and it is going to be the four of us, and I am excited. It's going to be whatever it's going to be. I won't even make any predictions, but I'm excited to find out together.
Right now, we know that it's happening.
Yeah.
It's underway, and that is pretty much the extent of my understanding of what topics we're going to cover, where we're going to go. But yeah, I'm super excited for this four-person roundtable we got here.
Absolutely. No, these episodes are always a lot of fun. And again, like I just want to mention to everybody, if you're in the comment section, feel free to ask questions, participate in the conversation however you can, because we always enjoy your input. We always enjoy the twists and turns that go with your participation, and we would love for you to be a part of this. So if you are watching in the live stream, participate, say hello. And of course, Marie, thank you for joining us. It's always nice to have you here. Where do we want to go today? We were talking about a lot of stuff. We've been talking about a lot of stuff, but since Marie is with us today, why don't we talk about education a bit?
I would love that. Oh gosh. Any general direction, or you just want
Yeah,
to?
okay. So
Okay.
that's a great question.
Yeah.
So obviously you work in the education system,
Right.
and you work with younger children. For anybody who doesn't know Marie, I'm filling you in on some stuff. Um, and you've been teaching for how long?
Um, I've been teaching since I left school, so like 7 to 8 years now.
So
Yeah, in different areas.
obviously you spend a lot of time with kids, but you also spend a lot of time dealing with, the rules and regulations of the schooling system and whatnot. What would you say would be, I don't know, the single biggest problem that you might see in terms of how kids would normally learn versus how the schooling system would insist that they learn?
Oh, yeah. That's a tough to narrow it down to one, but what comes to mind is actually what I experienced. I just finished working at a summer camp, and there was just like 9 kids, and there were 3 teachers, and we just got to do experiments. We were spending days at the park. We took a field trip to like a splash pad, and we cooked together. We read cool stories together. It was just this natural learning and fun and joy that was happening in the learning, and I'm like, my God, this is just happening without the priority to be, let's educate them right now. Let's make sure that they're learning, because it was just coming naturally by us spending time together and doing different activities, kind of being more lenient of like where they want to go and what they want to do. And it was just like, I mean, we had the parents would come in every day like, yo, the kids are loving like what's happening here. I'm like, really? Like honestly, we're all just hanging out together and like, spending time together and letting them, it's like it felt so free and it felt so easeful. And like that's not what education unfortunately looks like. It looks like fear. It looks like structure. It looks like rigid. It looks like putting everyone inside of a box. So unfortunately, the priority doesn't actually rely in learning with the education system. They don't, surprise, surprise, they don't want you to actually learn. They want you to learn how to participate in the system. They'll teach you how to, be participating in some type of activity or work for a period of a day. Like there's so many things that the school system tries to set you up into being, whereas learning could be curiosity, it could be joy, it could be learning how to communicate and work with each other, and um, how to reassure and give guidance in areas where they could be more self-regulated in their emotions and their experiences when things come up, and be um, Yeah, and in an area where it actually benefits, it actually benefits the child into growing into this changing world and what it looks like all the time. It's just there isn't a priority in people learning. That isn't where the priority is. And it's all about yeah, keeping the system going. So I think if there would be a shift, it would be let's aim to actually teach to learn and to teach to be with one another.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? Is just the recognition that we're always kind of learning when we're at ease, when we're interested, when we're engaged. We want to take things in. I think that was one of the most challenging things for me when I started homeschooling my daughter was I got ingrained with there's a test, there's a test and you need to be more or you need to be afraid of failure, right? You need to want to be more, you need to be afraid of failure. And for me, it was just like, well, how can I enjoy learning as an example, which means to not actually put on the show, but to enjoy learning. So I had to go through all of that deconstruction process to find, my own way of being fascinated by the world again at the end of the day, right? But it's just because that fascination's beaten out of us to a very large degree. But yeah, I think that's incredible. And again, as a person yourself who kind of has found a way to give yourself the space to be who you are, to be authentic and whatnot, that's awesome in terms of you being a part of their environment as well, because that just provides more space. You're not trying to define yourself as somebody who knows what's best.
Yeah, and I feel like over time we make it so much more about the words too, the words that we're hearing. But at those ages, it's not so much about the words at all. They see right past those words most of the time. And so just like with, as adults too, but like being that experience and environment is so cool and so vital. And I feel like that shift, like you're talking about the experience you were able to have where they were able to more organically learn. I feel like that one of the differences I was seeing was like this spectrum of like doing what you want versus doing what you're told. And so like if a kid was just left to his own devices doing what they wanted, like they may just like have no sort of they just be all over the place, like total chaos. But so there's like a little bit of implementation of like doing what you're told in the sense of like a facilitation component. But the current situations we have, it's basically just all extreme do what you're told, do what you're told. Like what you want is like completely irrelevant. So of course, we end up in a spot where it's like, you're in your 20s or 30s or whenever it hits you, but it's like I've never really thought about what I actually wanted beyond all of these, guiding factors and expectations and considerations that don't actually have something to do with my experience and what I feel enthusiastic and passionate about. Because at that age too, like you can be that like kids are so enthusiastic, period, that you can kind of set them on to anything. And for the most part, they'll get super, super involved in it. And so if it is specific stuff that they don't want to do, it's like, yeah, no wonder that magic sort of leaves at an early age. So
I
You know,
love what you said. Oh no, sorry, again, Amanda.
no, I was thinking about just the history of public education and how that is a big driver to the experience that a lot of us have gone through, in today's day and age. And it wasn't created to support curiosity and exploration. It was created to facilitate, factory workers, people that could, take orders and follow instructions and be competent enough to take the instructions, but not competent enough to critically think and to see how they were, put at a disadvantage right from the beginning. And so it's like, no, it's not that public education doesn't work, is that it's working exactly the way that it was intended to. But a lot of us don't know that. And then we wonder, why it's not working, is because it's being presented like it's this huge opportunity, and it's really just a conditioning system. And it's creating just workers. And so I'm glad that we are talking about education and how learning doesn't just happen at school. Learning happens everywhere, but it's also sold like it's the only source where you can learn. And that's not the case, because people and the kids are learning from you, from the way that you're showing up. They're learning from the way that you live your life. And so it's just being able to see that learning is happening outside of school. And it used to be driven at home a lot of the times. You'd learn a lot of your life skills, your trades from your family, from your parents. And we've taken that. And so we put so much space between the lesson and the structure.
100%. I appreciated also when working with the kids exactly what you were saying, Andrew, of like giving them the choice. Like they are so often told what to do, what to learn, what to believe. And that's why I always believed in just having the space for people to explore and like participate in different activities that get them, you know, curious and interested in, you know, learning something new, but also giving them the time to figure that shit out on their own. Because as much as you were saying, it might be chaotic for kids and they need like some structure, like of course, but at the same time, they're so good. They're like they totally got it. Like I love the moments because it felt so loose this camp. Just kind of like letting them lead the way and how they were like this one kid would sit and eat lunch for like an hour and a half. I loved it. He was eating everything so slowly. He was telling stories in between like an old man. I was just like sitting with him while I'm beating, you know, jewelry and some kids are building in the back. Like, it was so loose and like and it was just like so enjoyable just to be around each other and like just engaging in conversation or engaging in a lunch together is learning because we are constantly learning if we are paying attention. And like, and I was just reading that actually in Krishnamurti's book, Total Freedom, of just the idea of um, being present. And like, that's people are seeking and trying to obtain and looking for, you know, desires, but it's presence that is it. Like, why are we reaching? It's right here. It's and so it's in those moments I feel like I learn the most when it doesn't feel as structured or rigid. And I appreciate also what you said, Ray, too, because I feel like I am creating my own reality of what work looks like for me, as you all know very well. But like in terms of just like going with like how I'm trying to live and whatever is showing up in while I'm trying to do that will show up while I'm trying to do that. And as long as I'm continuing to practice and let that be the, yeah, what, I don't know. I'm just letting that run things. And I don't know. It's been a cool ride.
That is awesome. No, I really appreciate that because again, I don't know, it's fun. It's funny because like, as a parent, it's always an interesting mix of giving kids space versus also paying attention, like just paying attention because there's numerous different points in a day where children are learning about selfishness, like they're learning how to be selfish. And I guess people's usual go-to or strategy for that is punishment, you know, judgment and punishment. Whereas somebody who's not doing that with themselves is going to go over and address it in a very different way. They're going to address it in a way where it's still serious, it's still a conversation, but it's more about empathy. Like, well, what about the other person? How would you feel if this happened to you? That kind of thing, without the judgment, you know, and even like, I get it, I understand, you know, but you gotta think this through. I think that part of education needs a little bit more on the development side. I don't think there's enough of a realization of how important it is for teachers to not just know how to point at a book and say, do that, but to also have a level of self-awareness about their own development, about their own, and you know, immediately I know the system's like, oh, that's what psychology is for, and you know, that's what therapists are for, but I don't think that's the case. I think that this is something that's very much necessary collectively. I mean, even with parents, there's a lot of parents out there that still act like they're in high school. You know, and what they're teaching their children is that the top of the ladder is high school. That, you know, the being an adult is thinking like you did in high school because that's what they see. And so yeah, it's an interesting balance of faith and presence. Faith and self-awareness. You got to give them the space, but on the other hand, still be on your shit.
Mhm. Maria, I have a question for you. You know, let's say hypothetically we could make one change to like the US education system. What would you recommend? If we could hypothetically make one nationwide change, what would you do?
Hmm. It's hard to say, like it's like earlier with the one change because it's at the foundation, like you were saying earlier, the foundation of what the education system is for is fucked. Like you
I mean,
said,
you
like,
could shut down all the schools hypothetically. That could be the one thing. Shut
I
them all
know. I
down
mean,
and
it's
start
just
over.
like the shift of what you're wanting the outcome to be is what I would want to change because the outcome is, like you said, workers, people participating in what will continue the system to continue to exist. And what
Mhm.
I would like to see is more, I want more creative thinkers. I want more people that are, questioning things. But the mass doesn't want that because then it would, take away the belief in the system that it exists. So it's like I guess yeah, the ideal dream would be let's hit it at the foundation. Let's get people to actually be here to choose to learn and be curious instead of the education system producing workers and people to perpetuate the capitalistic belief in
Right.
what society should look like.
So invest more in the creative and not just in the logical part. So I like that recently STEM became STEAM, you know,
Mhm.
science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics,
Yep.
I believe is what it stands for. And it used to be STEM, but now they included art because art and music are critical and they've been discounted as like lesser subjects, you know, but it's like invaluable, you know. Ray, you've seen it firsthand with Celeste playing musical instruments, and Marie, I'm sure you've seen how much arts and creative expression and explorations, how crucial that is for taking in all the other more practical information.
100%. And it makes sense like that art and music are tied with that because how much of it is math and how much of it is connected to
Imagination.
aspects of yeah, exactly. So it's cool to see that it's about all of it. Can't be about one thing.
Yeah. And opportunities to relax too. Like let those all those times that you spend like focused on all the technical stuff in school, like just give space for it to even settle and take a step back and ask some questions. But again, like you said, it's like it's perpetuating itself because as soon as there's a little bit too much of creative time, it's like whoa, 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 the walls are getting questioned a little bit. Hold up, let's maintain this back a little more, but we're seeing, you see enough consequences of something, and usually from within, there's some shifts or just lack of participation at the end of the day. So
And lack of funding. Like no bullshit, the thing that gets cut the most in the US education system is arts and music education. Like those things get cut the most. So it'd be really cool if we could like go fund like an arts supply tsunami of supplies into the nation, you know, like that'd be cool for us to rally somehow and find a way to support art and music education because it's not getting the government, it's not getting federal support or even state or local support at all.
Honestly, just
Oh,
any
sorry.
money, yeah, any more money to the education system in general would be
Well, that too.
Yeah, but it's funny because I think a big thing, and I see it all the time, is that so you teach younger kids. Are you their
yeah.
only teacher?
What was that last
Are
question?
you their only teacher?
Um, no.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So they have numerous teachers in a day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So that that in itself is kind of jarring because you never really have that long of a relationship with anybody. You get them for a year or they get you for a year and then they move on to someone else. And I think to a large part, we don't really attach to those teachers. They just become authority, almost like guards in a prison, right? Like they're just doing their job. And their job is ultimately to keep us in place. You know, they may think, you know, they're there to teach us, but as soon as we get up and we're like, I don't want to do this, they're like, sit the fuck down or you're going to the office. So
Yeah.
immediately they take on this role of authority. And I think that changes a lot of things. And so I don't know what the solution to that is necessarily, except perhaps, and I say this as a parent who's homeschooled, empowering parents to a larger degree, almost involving parents in the education of their children, like to actually have them be a teacher in their life. And I understand that immediately you're like, yeah, but you know, they got to work and stuff. Again, I would think that's a systemic problem. That seems to be something that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Like as a culture, in the same way that secondary school or post-secondary school should be free. Like if we really take our species seriously, I think empowering parents, even helping parents with funding in order to have the time in a day, maybe a day per week, 2 days per week, to that they're actually spending that time with their kids so their kid doesn't feel so disconnected in a world of authoritative strangers. You know, they still have that anchor at home, and their parent is getting education, right? Because they're learning how to help teach their kids. Because that was the big argument I had when I was first parenting and homeschooling. Everybody's like, "Oh, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I'm smart enough." Well, then read a fucking book.
Yeah. You want to get smarter? Learn. It's infuriatingly simple because you're like, why can't I just get a download like a fucking robot? It's like, because you're not a robot. You're here. You're here for the whole experience. And it's funny that you talked about like free education. College used to be free in the States, and that was before, slavery was abolished. And then all of a sudden, now that everybody could do what they wanted with their time, all of a sudden now we got to charge because they didn't have enough money, enough resources. So it's like when you see the way that things are structured, it's like it isn't structured to be very friendly and easy, user friendly, but it doesn't mean that it's locked. It's not stuck in stone. And there is still potential and we can still empower ourselves. That's why I love talking to people about like their phones. I was like, you have like a free college in your phone. I'm like the internet, man. Like you can learn about anything. There's a YouTube video. There's a subreddit about a subreddit. And somebody has dived down that rabbit hole, was like, I've come back from my explorations. Who could I tell? You know what I mean? Like I love learning because it is like this epic adventure, but people think that they're not capable. And that is an old narrative that, you're not. You can't do it unless some authoritative person or structure gave you permission. And ultimately, we don't need permission to learn in the same way we don't need permission to live. But we certainly have bought that because it was sold to us. But, we don't have to keep buying and we can go in a new direction. And so I love hearing, Marie, the way that you're showing up for your students and how they're resonating and they are super intuitive. So you're right. It's not like one thing, but definitely empowering the parents and empowering people in general to not view learning as this linear thing, but as this like ever evolving, unfolding experience.
Potential, just constant potential expansion, like opportunity every single day. Like life feels so much more like an adventure when it is like seeing that, oh, there are opportunities to look at, focus on things a little bit differently or pay a little bit closer attention. Like I have an experience of myself that I can dial a bit. Like there is opportunity there and based on how willing I am to do that. Like there's a different experience. Like there's other things, there's so much more there when it's not about like, well, what about it? What does it mean about me? Like, how do I measure? Which again was like a big part. Like we got, given that a constant, like the constant measurement again. I know we already went into the schooling back and forth a bit, but like just the constant measurement, it's like no wonder we're always wondering how we're doing and waiting for someone to tell us what to do instead of being willing to just take a step ourselves and like trust ourselves and relax and just like, it's okay. There's not necessarily a correct next step. Just be sensitive to where you're at and it'll show itself to some degree.
Yeah.
To some degree, it'll be there.
Yeah, I also love the idea of the parent support too, because I find that a lot of parents aren't even aware of like basic child developmental things. So like they have these like expectations of where their children should be, and I'm like, they are 4. Like I'm like,
Right.
what are
They're going to Yale. They're going to
yeah,
Yale.
like, and yeah, just like these, like, should they be, reading and doing these math things? And I'm like, no. Were you? I'm confused because sometimes it feels like, and I've seen this too, where it just feels like they forgot their process of learning, like
Yeah,
what it was like. Yeah.
Yeah.
straight up. Most people don't even remember what it was like to be a kid. That's why they're so hard on their kids.
Yeah.
Right.
'Cause if you remembered what it was like to be a kid, you'd be super nice to your kid.
It's hard.
That doesn't mean give them everything they want. That's part of the reason you should be nice to your kid, is because they don't understand why they shouldn't get what they want. They don't understand why they can't get what they want. To them, everything's fucking simple. That trajectory through the school of hard knocks has not yet started. They haven't been disappointed. They haven't been frustrated. They haven't felt left out. They haven't felt isolated. They haven't worried about not being enough. They haven't felt responsibility or pressure or any of these things. Being a kid sucks. Like, there's so much about it. As much as you're like, oh, it was the greatest time of my life. Sure. While you cherry pick certain memories.
Yeah. Like
You know,
Christmas morning.
straight up.
Yeah.
Talk to your parents. Ask them what was some of the hardest moments when you were a kid, and they'll tell you about the time you skinned your knee, or the time you got in an accident, or the time that your first crush broke your heart, any of those things, or the time when you just felt like life didn't make any sense. You're like, is this real? And like, all of these things were moments that you went through as a person. And yet we look back at it and we're just like, yeah, it was all play. Making friends was easy. And like, was it? Or were those not really friends as you would define them now? Like, we often do that, eh? It's like, oh, it was so easy when I was a kid. Yeah, if you consider a friend somebody who's willing to run around a slide with you.
Yeah.
The foundation of your friendship was having the same lunchbox.
Exactly.
Like,
You have the same name, even.
Right.
You're fucking in line, same last name or close to, in alphabetical order. Like that was, yeah.
That was a lot.
there was just less conflict. So, you were just like, hey, you wanna run to the tree? Like, yeah, sure, why not? It's just like
We're friends.
There was an ease to it, yeah. And then it becomes a thing, and then it's like, oh, hanging after school, and all of a sudden it's like sleepover. And there's stuff, oh my gosh, discount how much happened throughout childhood. Like you remember a lot about the last 5 years, but like you've done that a number of times, like that much experience that just completely discount those first, I don't know, depends on the person, 5-10 years. Like it wasn't something that, meanwhile, you were soaking up so much more back then in terms of evolution and shifts and changes. But yeah, it's like we almost don't even remember how much was there and how long it probably felt, because we were paying such close attention to everything, because it was all so uncertain and unknown and new.
Oh,
so much.
Huge. Like, give me an image. So you're lying in your bed. It's the end of the night. There's a hallway light on that you can see the light through the frame of your door, but the rest of your room is dark. And you're sitting there and the dark seems huge and the light is just all encompassing. And that whole feeling of being nestled in your blanket, just looking at all the darkness, all that shit. Now you don't think about that shit at all. You're like, oh, hallway lights on. And that's it. It doesn't have the same impact. And I think that's one of the reasons that we don't remember a lot of our childhood, is the fact that we're just not that present anymore. Like, not in the same way. Like, we think in terms of concepts, people's names, places, dates. things like that. And we keep thinking about, what it meant in terms of our drama with people in our lives, like how it affected our relationship and all that stuff. But as a kid, it was all just about where we were, right? It was about the scent of the air, or the people that we were hanging out with, or the sound, or the texture of the carpet, or like just stuff like that. Like our memories were much more rich because we were in fact in the present where they were happening. But now it's almost like we live somewhere zoomed out from the timeline that we're a part of. So we're never actually looking too carefully at any one moment. It's always, where is this on the trajectory to someone or from somewhere, right? And so I think it's just fascinating that we forget that, that the reason we don't remember our childhood is because, frankly, we're not paying attention.
Because if you are paying attention, like even as you're talking about childhood right there, it's like all of a sudden I'm getting like different memories of childhood, and there's so much in, like there's a lot in there. Like it's all kind of in there somewhere. But if you're doing the glazing over, every experience, like not really being that dialed in, because it's like sometimes it can feel like a point where it's like, oh, control, letting go of that sort of like thinking about how, like just thinking, I guess. And it's like to access that expansive mind that's like, when you're paying attention, there's more available there, as opposed to the closed-mindedness that goes with maintaining or trying to maintain or control or hold on to like this false certainty in your head about other situations. Like there's like a jump there almost, and it's a component of relaxation for sure. Like relaxation plays a huge role in it, but it's not really that. It's like a willingness to just pay attention without like an additional component of like me doing it or me doing something on top of it. And it's like it's always right there, despite whether you're tense or relaxed, and assuming that there's something that should be different that's going on is the thing. Like you're creating a trajectory in the moment that like I got to do something on top of this, and it's like no, it's just still what it is. And some of those can be super habitual, but
It made me think of also what, in terms of changing what education could look like, or just like having, like, I believe in having them have more space to relax, or giving them the space, to breathe. Like, and what I found too is also not just with the kids, but with the teachers too, because when I find that I'm practicing it myself, because like a day gets very hectic and intense, and like there are moments where things feel like everything's falling apart and you don't necessarily what to do. And when you get too caught up in everything's going to shit, instead of just like you were just speaking on that acceptance, that just like this is where we're at, meet it where it's at, without the judgment, without the self judgment. Because once I started to beat myself up of how I was handling maybe a situation that was going awry, it was like it was just digging myself a hole. Whereas when I started to learn how to give myself the space to relax into the situation, not to judge myself, but just to breathe, just to accept what's happening, regardless of what was happening, even if the judgment thoughts are popping up, like, you don't look good. This is no good. You're a terrible teacher. It's like, no. This is just a lot, because human beings naturally, like when we're together a lot, or we're in a day, it is a lot. So I get it, situations are going to go, it would be weird if it didn't, like if every day was like hunky-dory and like there was no things that popped up. It'd be like, what's happening here?
That's not life. Life isn't
not
always
life.
hunky-dory. So why would schooling be super hunky-dory? Marie, I have a consideration for you. If would you get rid of standardized testing or the grading system as a whole, if you could only get rid of one?
Oof.
I know.
I would, I guess, get rid of standardized testing, as long as like I could, because there's like testing. I think testing could look different. It's more just like
An assessment?
Exactly. Like, where are you all at? What are you learning? What are you gaining from this experience that we're having? And I think tests or assessments can look differently. So if I like it should not look not should. I know this shouldn't, but like just to memorize and spit out information for a standardized test. There's even like a funny part of a documentary I saw where education in Finland. I'm like very into like how Finland educates because they get it. And a bunch of their educators or the students rather came to America to experience American education for a bit and went back and like spoke on like what they observed. And immediately, like what they all agreed was that standardized testing that needs to go. It makes no sense. Like any type of multiplication, also multiplication is it what is it about?
Multiple choice?
Multiple choice, thank you.
Okay.
I'm like,
I was picking up what you were putting down, okay, you know?
We assumed it wasn't down with multiplication.
I was like, I guess how often do I do multiplication throughout the day? Yeah.
I'm just adding from now on.
Yeah.
you're right. Just
Vision
add,
only from now on.
Starting
oh,
high.
like, but multiple choice are like you just answer whenever you're assessed here, you just answer the question. There's no multiple choice of and they don't even get
Like
assessed
that.
till much later in the it's not like they start assess like in high school and like that's when things start, but learning for the primary ages are all about exploration, about learning how they want to learn and not necessarily to grade or to assess themselves, but just to learn. And so I'm like, that's it, that's it.
Right. And like safe or space to self-reflect also on like what they're doing and actually take in like, oh, there's something happening here. Because I know in my experience, like in terms of being like zoomed in or zoomed out, I could be really good and like locked in, zoomed in to a situation and like be banging stuff out and not really have a lot of context as to like the zoomed out point of view, because it was always like do what you're told and it's like, hey, just do this, and then you do a bunch of this and get really good at that, and then
Yep.
you can just repeat that and keep doing that stuff. And so giving kids the space to zoom out themselves and like have that little bit of separation where it's like, what did I learn from this lesson, or what did we even go over, even doing that, because half the time it's like I don't even know what I went through, but I did a bunch of problems or answered a bunch of shit and didn't take that extra step to like consider why it might be important or what I might take from it or how it might have shifted me or what I might have, learned from it. So just incorporating something like that, I think would be kind of cool as well, because that's important for adults too. And I think it would do our world a bit of good of that from time to time.
Yeah.
I also remember somebody sharing in our Patreon call, like that's also an educator, that one of their students was like I believe they work with high school students, which is like a great age because what is happening during that time, who knows? And they're working with kids that are going to college and asking like, well, what do you want to do? And they never asked that. Like what you were saying, Andrew, it feels like more like you find something that you're good at and you repeat, doing that thing because it'll get you to that goal that, is spoken of giving you a life that is secure and blah, blah, blah. And let that be the focus instead of what are you curious about? What do you want to learn about? What do you want to get into? And I think like, once again, shifting towards that choice, that it being about the student versus what is like wanting to be taught to the students. It's like let the student figure out what they want to learn. What do they want to? Because we naturally do that, but if you don't give them the space and we're just constantly being told what to believe and what to think and how we should be, how are we gonna figure that out on our own, which we can.
Yeah. Another thing I think would help a lot would be reminding us that we're not asking, like, you don't need to decide what you're doing forever. Because I think that is a huge part of the pressure. And if only we were Because admittedly, when you look back at a lot of the people historically, were like, these were cool people, these were important people, blah, 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 blah. Usually they're people who did a lot of different shit.
Mhm.
You know, there are people who went through a lot of different types of jobs or different experiences, things like that. It usually wasn't just the one thing. And so I think it would really help. I know it's helped me as a parent in just communicating that. A lot of the pressure that you're feeling isn't really there. That most of what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life is whatever's next. That's what you're going to be dealing with, what's next, and maybe, you know, where you might think you're going. But teenagers don't get that. And because their brains are oversimplistic in a lot of ways, they're still learning a lot of things. It really does feel like, no, I need to know what I'm going to be forever now. And it's like, that's ridiculous. Like that's not even a thing. And we don't really tell them that, I don't think. And I think it's because we want them to be so earnest and gung-ho about getting into the workforce rather than a little hesitant, you know, a little bit more of, you know, yeah, I'm going to do this for a few years and see where it goes. You know, I think that would change a lot of our education system.
Being curious as you step into it, like understanding that there are some underlying things, like there is a preparation process in the system to get into this, but yeah, like so much weight comes off when it's recognizing, because with that sense of control and that sense of a guarantee, it's like you can expand out that concern about your future really far and like assume that there's some certainty in that, even for a later in a day is
Mhm.
crazy. Like when that's an unknown, like the thought of like what something is going to lead to and get you there, despite like you not paying attention as you go along the way. It's like the more you are paying attention, the more that need for any path whatsoever like just doesn't hold up quite the same anymore. It's like there's so much information getting taken in right now. Like there's so many things that are influx and like so many potential ways to take this situation here, that the thought of trying to narrow that down into a specific path and then just following that, like it doesn't even that's not even something that seems reasonable or rational. Like it just seems kind of absurd and very stale, super stale. But it gives you that sense of like, yeah, but apparently it's worked before. But that's if you have something in the future that you think is going to make you better.
What do you mean by work?
I was gonna say it hasn't worked before. My fucking parents and grandparents are miserable. These motherfuckers are bitter and upset. You know, that's what it's so funny because like I had friends chatting with me, and they're like, Amanda, you know, you're doing a crazy move, which is not too surprising, you know, based on your history, but still it's a crazy move. And I'm like, okay, I'm hearing the feedback, and my response is your cookie cutter societally approved option provides no more guarantee than my crazy one. We are in the same boat. So as much as you think that my option is crazy, it offers the same guarantee that yours does, which is none.
Exactly.
You don't know that your option is going to provide you with certain results in the same way that I don't. But we are hedging our bets and making our choices in the way that we are, and we're going to find out which way it's going to go. But you know, we were talking about my choice to, you know, leave a corporate job and to, you know, not really just try to be on that corporate ladder. And, you know, she's still in a position that is very much, you know, more in alignment with that. And I'm like, okay, well, still, it doesn't make sense to continue to go on the corporate ladder when everybody that I see that's above me on the ladder looks like they don't want to fucking hop off. Like, if we really want to be honest about the system that we're in, that I was just in, that I'm still technically in, it's not working, guys. So, like, can we skip that part where we pretend that it's working and we can just talk about maybe considering doing something different? You know, and we can do that with education. We can do that with our life. It's not set in stone, but it means admitting that we are not, that we didn't, you know, that maybe we were wrong. And not maybe that we were wrong, maybe that we were prioritizing something that doesn't need to stay a priority. And I think it's a lot easier to admit something like that than to say I'm wrong. It could just be, my priorities then are just not my priorities now, and it's okay to change because the priorities are now different.
Yeah. I also like thinking of like what we've been speaking on, like the responsibility that comes down to like us. We can speak so much about like what society has done and what exists and this thing that, but it's how we're all showing up to do like, and so like you are, by doing what you're doing with Dualistic Unity and creating this and letting this be the focus right now, right? Like instead of it being on staying in the corporate or making that decision and staying there, but allowing this to be the focus. And I find myself doing the same thing, just like allowing my focus to be more on my approach on everything, and however it shows up and what this experience is. And maybe we have to have jobs, or we have to do some way to keep making money so that we could eat and continue to participate in this world. But like I'm not seeing it as my job more and more. I'm more just seeing it as like another day or another experience or moment to moment. Like I'm just like, this is me right now. I'm in a classroom maybe full of kids, or maybe we're all at the park, or maybe and now I'm on summer, which means moment to moment looks way different. When like it's like totally free. But at the same time, it feels just as free as when I'm working though. And so like I'll have moments, of course, like when my alarm goes off, where I'm like, okay, fuck this. This is ridiculous. And I do think that also everything could be an hour later. It's a little silly to be waking up so early, but
Oh, I agree.
Studies have shown that school doesn't necessarily need to be earlier, and especially with high school kids, like it shouldn't even start before like what was it, 9:30, 10?
yes,
Like they don't function before that time. Why are they on a bus going
nobody
somewhere?
does.
But
It's
also
7 a.m.
no, but even talking about the structure of public education, like so much of it is just shuffling between classes. So much of it, because if you actually, when I looked at homeschool documents, it's like 4 hours max of like actual, like going through assignments. It's not actually like 8 hours worth of going through assignments, but it's 8 hours in school because you have to go from class to class. You got to go to lunch. You got to go to the bathroom. Most of the time spent in school is not learning.
Yeah, just shuffling around the prison.
You're just shuffling.
Even when you are in the learning
Cell block.
situations.
Oh, it's outside time now. It's out in the yard. Out in the yard.
Time to shift. Get your
Buildings,
time.
So funny.
25 minutes.
Okay, it's been 20 minutes back.
No
back to your
running,
next
no
cell.
running.
Again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But avoid the bullies if you can.
Yeah, good luck. But I'll be hanging inside in the AC. So
Yeah.
see you afterwards. You guys got a fence around you. You want to
But you know what it
escape?
matches? The work day.
Yeah.
It matches the work day. And it's like parents should be home more, and so should the kids, because nobody should be working this much. I liked it in the 1920s, they had predictions that we would have a 3-day work week and robots would do like 95% of all the jobs. And I was like, where is this future that we have imagined for ourselves? We are in 2024. They thought of this in the 1920s. What is wrong?
Okay, so I think the problem there is the fact that we would only be able to do that with a, I guess, selfless enough mentality,
right,
where we're not just going after our egotistical needs and fears. Like the biggest example of that would be the population. Like people have children like they're accessories.
Yeah.
And it's because they don't have to take care of them. And frankly, it's just what you do, right? Like you get out of school, you get a job, you make money, you meet someone, you get married, you have a child. That doesn't do anything. Then you have another child. It's not making life any better. You have another child. Yeah, still, but now, one day you'll have grandkids. So you're banking on that. And it just becomes this way of distracting yourself to a very large degree. And again, not really being there for them because you're sticking them all in school. Right. And so I think that if we want to have a population, or if we want to have a world where people can take 3-day work week and robots can do everything, they got to stop fucking so much, or at least just stop having so many kids, because that's the problem. Is if everybody had 2 more days in a week and they're exercising the same selfish habits that they're exercising now,
Mhm,
we'd have twice the population in no time.
mhm.
I think that's what do you think? Like we refer to them as baby boomers. Just think about that. All of a sudden, a bunch of people got together, got real bored. Yeah.
Well, that's part of it. I don't know if people would know what to do with all of that time. Like a lot of people rely on the structure of work, even. And it would be like 4-day weekends. Like that's a lot of booze consumed. And as we were talking about this morning, like there is
That's a good
probably a
point.
pretty direct correlation, not only to certain things, but yeah, booze to baby
Boost
ratio. There's some studies out there. It's like, oh yeah, we saw an
Boredom
uptick.
to booze
Yeah,
to baby.
like,
Yeah.
how did drop off during Prohibition? I don't know.
But it's so funny that we talked about like what would they do? I would so at the Denver retreat, they had these arcade games, and one of them was a Pac-Man, a Mrs. Pac-Man game. I'm telling you, we probably had like a 30-minute conversation about that game, staring at it, looking at the images, talking about like like making up stories about like Miss Pac-Man and like the way she's seductively sitting and comparing her to Betty Boo and the style and we didn't even turn it on. Mind you, this is a 30-minute conversation about an arcade game that we had not turned on. And I loved it. You know what I mean? So when people are like, oh, I'm so bored, it's like, how? How are you bored? How is it booze and fucking are the only two options you can think of when there is a plethora of everything? You could learn about the history of fucking straws. You could learn about, who invented the first, gunpowder. You could like, there is just so many fascinating things that are around us that it's just amazing that people say that they're bored. And it's like, look around you. There is nothing to be bored with. This is life we're experiencing.
But there's only so many things that you can think about yourself.
Oh, of course.
Right?
Silly me. I was thinking about me.
Really what it is, though, is there's only so many things you can think about yourself before they start overlapping. Right?
Yeah.
Like, no matter how many ways you look at yourself, there's only so many ways you can do so within the spectrum of you suck to you're awesome.
Right.
Right? That's pretty much it. And so, yeah, that gets fucking boring.
Yeah, it
Like it
does.
gets super boring and people mistake that world for reality.
Yeah.
And that's why all of a sudden there's no interest in anything, because
No
it
interest
means
ever.
something shitty about you. It means something that you have to do. It means that now all of a sudden you've got to do something to take responsibility, or you've got to grow, or you're not enough, or now you're less than someone else. Like everything goes through that filter of being about you. So yeah, it's super dull.
Mhm.
At that point, you don't want to think at all. You don't want to think about anything. In the same way that kids who go through traditional schooling often don't want to read
Mm-mm.
after the fact, and it's because reading's always sucked for them.
It's an obligation.
Force, yeah, expectation. Yeah, yeah. Like it's crazy how much we take away from that potential to learn.
We have a comment here. School hours are set for the parents to work longer, not for the benefit of the children.
Much.
Totally. And it's wild also like how much like some kids are in school or some kind of activities, like you were saying, of like these parents aren't even raising their kids. Like they're just putting them in different things for other people to watch and take care of them and do the work and expect it to be done for them. And I think back of what we were saying too about the population, because I feel like if a lot of people knew what they were getting into with what parenting is and had like any semblance of knowledge before actually making the decision to do it,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many people would actually end up doing it? It's like it's smaller percentage. It would be less because people don't fully. I mean, how could you though? You can't. But there is
Oh, that was COVID though. All of a sudden, all those kids had to stay home, and there was a collective chorus of "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
And it's just because they had to deal with the people that they brought into the world. They couldn't just shuffle them off. But the same was true for their relationships. All of a sudden, spouses that they had been connected to for years, but at a distance, as long as there was distraction and they didn't have to interact too often, they were stuck in a fucking room together. So yeah, no, it was very exciting. And I say that COVID had a real big impact on people because all of a sudden it made them kind of aware of their life choices and they couldn't run from it. And I think that there was an opportunity there for people to realize the power of that, the impact of that you can in fact slow down, pay attention, and there is more to your life. But yeah, just that collective feeling of suddenly being stuck with your shit with nowhere to run. I was just loving that.
Eating that shit up. Oh my gosh, 100%. Because people were faced with all of it. And like you said, had nowhere to run, nothing to do because everything was canceled and put off. All their distractions were no longer, you gotta just sit with your shit. And people lost their minds. And, but it was such a collective, like, learning. Of course it was, because we all took away different things and life learnings, and like you said, various relationships that have been existing for years. All of a sudden they had to spend some time together, a lot more time than they were used to, and it was like, oh my gosh, what am I have been doing? And with all of it, then career choices were made. Like different people were like, oh my God, I don't even love what I'm doing. Like everything was shown to them, and then like, wow. And I'm talking like them, like I wasn't part of that, but but it's just like it is wild. COVID was wild. What a time. It's all wild.
I think a lot of people had a tough time like maintaining ideas of people so much. They were interacting with a lot, it's like you're starting to see more and more sides of someone. It's like it's really hard to kind of keep that distant perception so much when you're seeing a lot more. It's like, oh, I didn't even know you were. I thought you were this, and we were able to kind of maintain that structure and distance enough that I thought that was the case. But like, no, I mean, it's never going to be the case with anyone. But yeah, certainly, even the person you're close to.
Yeah, including like, I definitely appreciate that COVID felt like a collective exhale once we all couldn't deny or pretend the fact that we were holding our breath, holding ourselves back, being super tense. It felt like it felt like a collective exhale to some degree. And I'm so glad that it was like forced reflection time, but not really forced. It was a culmination. Like it makes sense that with enough time alone, you start to see your habits in a new light, your perspective changes. And it's something that was brought up in early on in our discussions in the Discord and Patreon calls, was just that one thing that tends to be in common with the people that resonate with this conversation of authenticity and expression and sensitivity are people who usually spend a lot of time alone, or who have spent a good amount of time alone. And I didn't realize that, but then I was like, oh, but that makes sense though, because with time alone, you realize how much you beat yourself up, how hard you are on yourself, how unnecessary that is, how many hoops you jump through, how many distractions you go for, why you go for them. But you can't see that unless there's space. And there can't be space for you if you're always trying to crowd yourself with other people and other jobs and other tasks. But when you spend a good enough time alone, you see the relationship with you, and usually that's enough space and attention for you to build sensitivity to deepen the relationship with yourself. And like topics, you can never learn everything about a topic. You can never learn everything about yourself. You can never learn everything about someone else. And so I think if we could look at topics and people and ourselves with that open-endedness, like it's a bottomless bucket, I'll never get to the bottom of it. I don't need to. I don't need to know someone, but I can always be okay with being in the process of getting to know endlessly.
I kept thinking Andrew was gonna say something.
I was kind of thinking the same thing with you.
Great.
It's really just getting to know your experience too, and that opportunity. It's like, yeah, seeing yourself, seeing different experiences, and like really just expanding that and seeing like the ability to just see every interaction and the fullness of the moments there. It's like, what other option is there than to pay attention? to it. It's like, what is the alternative that we're looking for? What is the point that we want to get to? One that we can relax and be in the spot that we're in. Like, what, there's going to be some spot that we get to that's more easily available than it is right now. It's like, it's never going to be more easily available. There isn't another place, there's not another spot, there's not another like way to feel or interact with the world, or thing to do, or overcome, or relationship to have, that could make it, more of an opportunity than the one you have right now, to just, relax, take yourself a little bit less seriously. Like, it's not something that's happening down the road ever, but we create these trajectories thinking like, oh no, it couldn't possibly be me looking at myself and seeing what I'm putting in the way of myself, and this like sort of cyclical experience myself. It's got to be something else, and that desire for it to be, something else, be it another spot that you get, that someone helps you get to, or just, being like another person. It's like, that's where the pull can be, from being able to just sink in to the spot that you're in. Because like, the opportunity's right here all the time. Like, this is the opportunity to respond to your environment, and it's not something that you can prepare for. It's like, you gotta show up, or show up. It's like, that's the only option.
Yeah,
or
right.
just, I don't even know what else. Like, keep distracting yourself, keep looking somewhere else.
You're making it sound like I can't learn how to be in control. Serious people are in control, and serious people go to school. This is what I hear from society.
Oh yeah.
This is what I'm supposed to do, is be serious and take myself, to these accomplishments. And my life is supposed to be one way and in one direction. And that's what I've learned. So why isn't it working? Why do I feel so hopeless?
The next step's gonna work. The next step's the top.
A better plan. That's all I need.
Over there will work, not what I got right here. But once I get there, that'll be good. I like what you said though, Amanda, about the alone time, because it's funny that with people that resonate with this conversation tend to have had a lot of alone time, or even like for myself, I enjoy being alone. That's where I learned authenticity. That's where I could really explore. And what's been fun about it is I've been treating every moment as if I'm alone. So if I'm like, I like when I know Amanda talks about this too, of like, walking down the street and you're listening to music, and like, I'm alone. I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna sing out loud, and I don't know what I sound like because my headphones are in, but I'm gonna enjoy. Hey. and and like, and then have conversations as if I'm talking to myself, always. And then like, you watch how people respond, because they can recognize that you're coming with this ease, as if, and what's funny is, even my friend said to me, she was stressing, and we were working together, actually coming back as I'm working this camp. We went to the zoo one day, and we're on the bus, but she's dealing with like home life situations, and she's also like running this camp and like doing all the things, right? And she said, I sit next to her on the bus. She's like, "All right, I'm sorry, I'm just like responding." I'm like, "Oh no, do your thing. I hear you." And I just sat there in silence and just like continued riding the bus. She's like, "Thank you so much. Like, just being around you, like, it made me feel calmer." And that's because I was just sitting in my own, I don't know if you guys heard that, but it was a loud motorcycle. I'm sitting in my own, relaxation, my own authenticity, as if I'm alone. And whatever resonates, it usually does more in those moments, like we were saying earlier, than just me talking. I could have said things that maybe even were calming, or you could just sit there, and it's like that. It's those moments that like help me recognize not to try to overthink how I should be acting in this moment, but just to feel it out. Like, I've been watching a lot of Star Wars right now. Okay, started the Obi-Wan series, watched 2 episodes of it already, and like, but like a lot of that, the force in terms of search your feelings. You know what it is to be true. Like, if you just recognize, if you're just paying attention and just connect to what's actually showing up and be authentic, That means like even being honest. I like what even I think that's in the book too, of like being honest, like maybe you've been lying a lot, maybe you've been a liar. Be authentic and honest and like this is what's been happening. Okay, so what are we gonna do from here? Like we could sit here in judgment and condemn ourselves, but what is that doing? Because there is no need for it.
Right.
There's no need for it because you are always perfect. You're evolving and learning and all throughout that process, perfection.
Right. But I love the old definition of perfect, which wasn't without flaw. It was whole and complete, was the way that we used to use it. So I love it. You are perfect. You are whole and complete. And I have a question for you, Marie. We just talked about like solitude and the value of making the most of that opportunity, you know, the experience of being alone, but not lonely, you know. Do you think that is what's missing from our education system is highlighting some kind of like just acknowledging that? Because when I think about public education, I think about school, it's very group mentality. It's very much like I didn't really feel like the individual experience was even recognized. Really, it was just I need to memorize and regurgitate and spit on commands and be able to perform, and you know, pretty much, you know, that's it. But it was very much how to get along with other people, how to work together, how to be on a team, how to be a good, you know, good class. But I don't really think it's emphasized enough, like solitude, having time alone and being able to appreciate or recognize that you are always alone to some degree, and that it's not an issue. It's not something to run away from.
Yeah, I love that because it makes me think of what I was recognizing with teaching mindfulness to kids, what I was really teaching or what I was trying to convey to them. I told them, like, what I'm offering is a space for you all to remember to trust yourself. Like we have to remember, like, we got this. So like I love what you're saying in terms of I think I didn't trust myself at all during school. Like I don't think I would have said, "Oh, I got this. I could do these things." I was always afraid that I couldn't. I was always afraid that I was not good enough. So like the reminder that like you got this and that trust in yourself, and because that's where like the independence and confidence comes from too, because like you're right in terms of, you know, education and um keeping them like more of a group mentality, getting lost
Yeah.
in like actually learning for yourself and, you know, whatever it may be. It just I would say it's really just it's the trust that I'm like, and the trust is that we all got this. It's not just like a specialness that like you can, but like anyone can tune in because it's just the recognition that you got it. It's like it's so weird that it is that simple, but it's so it's you know.
I think that's it. It's deceptively simple, right? It's one of those things we want it to be complicated because it means more about us. But it's just it's funny because we want to oversimplify things, but we do it in a way that actually makes it harder. Like instead of just going from moment to moment to moment to moment, we try to simplify it. It's like, no, no, no. We want our kids to know everything they need to know to be safe in the world by this point. So we're going to structure all that. This is what they got to learn at this point, and 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 put this point. But because of that, there's no nuance. There's no ability to adapt to the child or their limitations, right? And again, like we were talking earlier about the parents and the teachers in constant rotation, like you just get to know a student and their quirks, and suddenly they're on their way to the next batch of teachers, right? And so that's really hard. But I think that like the way that we think to simplify is always a form of control rather than attention. That's really it. You want to keep it simple? Just be in the room with the kids.
Yeah, and then you won't miss stuff as they start doing things and learning things and sharing things. And then it's like if you're there and attentive and they're even having the experience of having an authority figure that isn't trying to direct them or guide them, but is there with them as like a spot in which they can, you know, check in from time to time instead of being told, you know, what to do, or even, you know, if they ask what to do, getting that reflected back to them. Like, what do you think? No, what do you think we should do? But it's exciting. it's exciting to yeah, hear just everything you're doing and getting updates about the, you know, the classroom stuff and the interactions with kids, just knowing how much of an impact that any interaction can be with, you know, or be or turn into or become at any age, but like, you know, especially children, for sure.
Yeah. So that said, I have a question. We have talked about at some point Dualistic Unity expanding, doing new stuff, getting involved with things. Let's say that you were to start your own school.
Right.
What would that look like? What would that look like? Have you thought about it?
Ray, come on, man. Of course I have. Yeah. I think it looks like coming together with a lot of people that already have the ideas and the ability to like create a school. Like we could just all come together with the ideas of how we know and believe that learning could look like. I've been saying this to everyone I come across when I'm working in education. I'm like, guys, come on. Like, I see all the people. We can all just come together. We have these ideas. We have ways of what we are, you know, trying to at least change it in our classrooms or in our experience with working with kids. What if we all came together? What if we all came together and created, and really it would just be a space for kids to come. I mean, I don't know how long, it's like, I even wrote like a whole, I don't want to say thesis about it, but like I drew pictures of what it could look like with gardens and, you know, people, they would help cook their food, and it
Oh, yeah.
would look like, yeah, I mean, it just experiment, like actual learning and being,
Mhm.
and like actual conversations and actual like joy in literature and reading too, because I felt that in terms of I thought I always hated reading, and then I was like, oh, I can actually read books that I like and like want to learn about, and that's how I even felt about education in general. It's like, what, this is a possibility, you know, like reading isn't a chore, reading isn't, and just yeah, creating a space where there's joy in learning, and there's authenticity would be the priority. Everyone come as they are, where they are, and we'll meet you where you are, and we'll continue to grow and learn together.
That is awesome. So that said, what about the environment for this school? And by that specifically, I know that you currently live in New York.
Yes.
Would you consider opening a school in a large city? Would you want to do it somewhere more rural? What kind of environment would you want to have around the school?
Yeah. Honestly, so okay, there's two things that come to mind because I've toggled between the idea of creating a school and then also influencing already schools that exist. So
Okay.
like so
Consultant or
I think
something.
I like my dream school to be like surrounded by nature somewhere. So I'd be like, that's the dream school for me. And it's a school that like no one pays for. It's locally funded or funded by, you know, people who can fund it and want to. And I would, you know, pitch ideas and stuff and whatever. And um and then it would be with infiltrating, not infiltrating, it sounds weird, but working with already existing schools, it would just be kind of like with programs I already am involved in. They're actually going to be, I am going to be getting a master's actually with this organization that is now such a crazy organization. I'm just going to shout them out. I don't know if they're ever, but it's called Breathe for Change. And they teach like educators about social emotional learning and this like transformative way of educating in terms of giving students the space to one, breathe, also reflect, work with one another, and it's for students and it's for educators. And they give us like great resources, kind of create workshops and classes. And it's like some of the stuff I've been using to work with the classes that I currently teach. And hopefully we'll be teaching the teachers at my school soon too. But like, so that's like where it feels like similar, what I'd be doing with working with schools. It's like providing various ways of running classrooms, or like a kind of like a program that they could incorporate in what their school already looks like. But my own personal school would be just, yeah, nature. We're cooking together. We're learning together. Yeah, yeah.
I like it. Well, I mean, given the state that the US education system is in currently, if Trump does win, there's a good chance that the Department of Education is going to be dismantled. If that's the case, then that might be a great opportunity for a nonprofit to be established to take the place of that and to do the things that the Department of Education is really supposed to be doing, which is encouraging programs like the Breathe for Change and exploring learning. Like, it's not so linear, one size fits all, but like it is very much a customizable, always changing kind of thing. So definitely something to keep in mind, that the opportunity might be perfectly arising given the state of the educational system in the States right now.
Yeah, that's so true.
That's the fun part about all of this. I mean, it's kind of like, and I think I appreciate this more and more as I get older, because I mean, I went through the cycle of going through school, and then after the fact, really being pissed off about it, just going through that whole, what the fuck did they do to me? And then just, why am I anxious whenever I'm worried about people not liking me? Like, all of this stuff, and you just go through it. But then after that, I became a parent. And in being a parent, I realized that all of that shit that I had gone through, and all of the opinion of it afterwards, had taught me not to do that to someone else, had actually taught me how to empathize with them in a different way. And I'm not saying that, it's necessary to do that, but perhaps there is a process here where we are taking more than we know out of this life that we're living. Maybe we are actually being shown the conflict again that I was saying earlier in social before this. Like, we grow and we keep growing, and then if we don't allow ourselves to keep growing, we come into conflict with things. And I think that our education system is showing that. I think that everybody who graduates from university and graduates, from high school and whatnot, and then later on down the road goes, the fuck did I learn? And they can barely remember. There's an opportunity there. And it's in the same way that we're learning with religion. Like, people cling to religion and spirituality and belief, regardless of the fact that it continues to lead them back to that state where they're still afraid. They're still looking for certainty. They're still looking forward. They're still looking outside themselves. They're doing all of that. It doesn't fucking work. And that's obvious. It doesn't work. But this is a lesson we're going to continue to have to learn until finally we let them go. And we just admit that we can change. So it's just kind of cool to see these consequences continuing to build, but building in a direction where people like you are now teachers. Where that wasn't something that you ran across very often. A teacher willing to question the education system. That's why I really enjoyed the word infiltrate earlier in the episode, because that's very much, what's happening here, except it's the infiltration of a mentality that was shunned, ostracized, ignored, judged as having no value, suddenly coming back into the common dialogue, coming back into the world of necessity, because the other shit just doesn't fucking work.
No matter
Yeah,
what.
okay. Nope, I'll give in. Yep. I was gonna hold it, but I'm like, nope. But the education system and that mentality of like the reaching, it's the same as religion and everything that else exists, of like reaching and hoping that once I obtain something, this is just like I was reading before. So cool. Once I obtain something, as if that's gonna mean something about you or change your experience, because all you ever have is the present. So if you're always like grasping for this false certainty, you're never going to like actually show up and be where you are. And that's going to show you a whole lot more than looking somewhere else. Like it's like mind blowing how often, yes, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I love it. Yeah, like with religion and everything that exists that gives people false certainty and false hope, and like, if you do this, you'll get this. It's I don't know where I was going with that. That's unbelievable, you know?
School is officially the if-then equation. If you get this, then you get that, and they fill in the blanks. But we don't realize that, we don't have to use that equation, that there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to live and learn and experience, and to see that living and learning are often the same thing, because you're learning through your experience. And as much as you can conceive and think, it's like experience life. There is no better reason and no greater priority than just here right now. And here right now is the experience. And so this is what we can learn from. But when we try to focus on the structure, we're just looking for a shortcut.
Yeah.
But the shortcut to there will never work, because we're always here.
Yeah. It feels like it's a lack of trust in ourselves to figure it out. Like we need someone else to tell us and show us the way. It's like, no, you got it. And that's why I like emphasizing to like people and kids, especially, like, trust yourself, like regardless of, the various things that exist out there that'll tell you how you should be living life and like what you think you should be doing. It's like, search your feelings.
Yes, the
True.
And we brought it back to Star Wars. Huzzah!
Absolutely. I just wanted to throw in, because this rarely happens, that we are actually going to end this episode a little bit early today. And the reason is, quite frankly, because we're celebrating. Earlier today, we went and had a meeting with our banking manager, and we've taken some significant steps with the podcast. And Marie, you've always been such a very big part of the community and the groups and everything else. I love dreaming about things with you. It's always so much fun. I look forward to the day that perhaps Dualistic Unity can be a force behind creating a school with you, because I know as a parent, it's really important. It's so important that we recognize that there are very few things in the world that have as much impact as having a child. Because it's not just that you've made a ripple, you've made a ripple making machine.
Yeah.
And it will be around longer than you. It is impacting your world. And it's so very important to take that in. And so it was just really exciting today to see these developments. We've got some production stuff happening on this end. We're not just going to be sharing one microphone from like 2 feet away anymore very shortly. I know.
Moving on.
I know. Exactly. But a couple of years back, we never thought we would be here. And we certainly never expected the podcast to grow as it has, and our relationship with so many people to grow as it has. And I can't imagine where we're going to be in another year, 2 years, 3 years. But thanks for dreaming with us. And audience member, listener, hello. We look forward to you joining us on a roundtable, sharing your dream with us, seeing what we can build together, because that really is what this is all about. It's kind of like the Lego movie. If we're all willing to be master builders, imagine what we can create.
Just building for ourselves and taking it one step at a time as we go, and maybe some shifts in the foundation may do some good for the branches and the leaves at some point. But Marie, always appreciate having you on to the roundtables, the calls. You're a joy to interact with. So it's been a blast.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. I'm jumping in on the I Love Marie train. Thank you so much for just showing up as you and being authentically whatever you've shared and whatever you continue to share. It means so much. And thank you for sharing your dream with us. It was on one of the first Patreon calls, which are all archived. So if you would like, you could see this conversation I am chatting about where Marie, you talk about your dream to start a school, to do something differently. And that was one of the first chats we had with you. And so it's like, thank you for sharing your dream with us, because you never know where it can go and where it leads to, but sharing it is worth it. And thank you so much for continuing to share, all of you. And thank you everybody for sharing this moment with us, and hope you have a hell of a day.
Hell of a day. Thank you all. Thanks for having this space to authentically show up and do this cool thing with you.
It is very cool, especially to watch it grow. That said, although we are taking a slightly longer break than we normally do to kind of celebrate, because we didn't get a chance. We literally got home and jumped right onto the live stream. And so we're looking forward to taking just a short half-hour break, and then we're going to be on Patreon for our weekly Tier 2 call on Tuesdays, which is an hour and a half, which means that you can join us from 8 p.m. Eastern Time to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A little bit of a late night DU. Anyway, we will see you soon. Everyone, thanks for joining us. Have a great night.